how decisions are taken about city spending. Mysterious because, well, not many people know what goes on behind the scenes and how these decisions are being made. However, before I get to that, I would like to invite my colleague Shravasti to quickly tell us a little bit about our work at Citizen Matters for those who are new here. Shravasti.
I would like to take to explain to everyone. Some of you may be new about what Citizen Matters is. Citizen Matters is a big media platform that serves as a knowledge exchange with insightful critical urban issues, ideas, and cities. Diving deep into issues which affect our quality of life, including water, commute, public safety, air quality, governance, education, environment, local economy, and more. We bring together civic media and diverse voices to help citizens build sustainable, equitable, and livable cities. We provide in-depth information and insights on various critical urban issues, facilitating understanding and for citizens to develop tools themselves to become change makers. Before I hand it over to like just make some ground rules here, I request all of you to share in the chat box. Those who have joined us on the YouTube live stream, please share your questions on the chat box or inbox us questions on Facebook, Instagram. We will try our best each of them, and we request everyone to not engage in any kind of trolling or event. We'll now begin our discussion. I hand it over to you, Bhanu.
You're on mute, Bhanu.
Sorry, you can also read more about Citizen Matters in our comments in the YouTube comment section. So just to give everybody a little bit of context about why this conversation is happening today. In Deccan Herald recently reported that BBMP is seeking approximately 7,000 crores for civic works from the state government. Most of this money is going to be spent on roads. And this is not the only time BBMP has asked for such a large amount. In the past 6 years, again, according to a Deccan Herald report, Bengaluru has got over 28,000 crores from the state government, and over 60% of this has been spent on roads. This, along with the fact that recently, there's a recent report again in Deccan Herald that BBMP has already issued 6,000 crores worth of work orders this year, and we're still in February. So that means that they've already planned for and spent, essentially planned and budgeted for 6,000 crores worth of road works to happen, largely road works to happen in the city. This is from the previous year's budget. And it seems that the state government largely agrees with this focus on roads and road infrastructure development, because in the budget speech last week, Chief Minister Bomay announced that Bengaluru would get over 9,000 crores for comprehensive development. And again, a big chunk of this money is going to be spent on roads. My rough calculation says around 3,000 crores at least, around 450 crores to build new roads, 300 kilometers worth of roads according to the budget speech, 350 crores just to build one 5-kilometer flyover from Tin Factory to Maidenhead. We have to ask why whether this money is worth spending, because obviously it's fair to say that we have seen a lot of spending and not enough results from this. So we see that flyovers that were built start crumbling within a week and need to be repaired. We find that citizens are continuously complaining about potholes. We have carried reports from 2015. What you see on the screen are reports from 2015 onwards about potholes. And you can see that the reports span, these are reports from Citizen Matters. These reports about just potholes on streets span from 2015 to 2022, all the way up to 2022, when there were people dying from bad roads. Yet there's no accountability, there is no explanation for how so much money can be spent, and we can still have such bad roads, such bad workmanship. And this brings us to some larger questions. Among them, one of them being, do we really need to spend this much money on roads? Do we need to spend this much money, and can we do it at much lower costs? Because yes, we do have bad roads that need to be fixed. We do have traffic congestion that needs to be fixed. Second person it brings up is, what about other aspects of living in Bengaluru? What about healthcare? What about BBMP schools? What about, say, regularization of work for power carnitas, who've been asking for this for nearly 2 decades? Do these things require as much funding and as much attention from our civic bodies as well as our political leaders or not? And third, it brings up this larger question, which is going to be the focus of our conversation today. How does this allocation happen? What is the rationale behind such spending? Who decides this can happen, and how can we, as citizens, as residents of the city, have a say in what is happening? Considering we live in a democratic society. To answer these questions, to help navigate these questions, we have with us three panelists. We have Katyayani Chamaraj, who is a freelance journalist who has been a journalist for over 32 years, and she's the executive trustee of Civic. We have Sukanya Baumik, who is a PhD scholar from the Institute for Social and Economic Change, and she's worked a lot on municipal finance. She's been looking at it for a while. And we have Santosh who heads the civic participation vertical at Janagraha. You can read more about all our participants' bios and more about their work in the YouTube description box and chat comment section again. Thank you so much, all three of you, for taking the time to talk to us today. And I would like to start, if the context was sufficiently clear, I'd like to start with Sukanya to give us a little bit of an overview. Can you explain to us how does this happen? How does BBMP plan its budget? How does it decide where money goes? And then how does the state government come in, or who comes in to provide that money?
Thank you so much, Bhanu. So I will start by putting things a little more in context, and I'll just give a little highlight for all the audience listening in today, a highlight of BBMP's, very high level highlights of BBMP's budget expenditure. So like you said, that a majority of it goes towards building infrastructure, which is say 67%. If I had to analyze 2021-22's budget, near about 70% goes towards building of roads. And like we all know, basic water supply and sewerage is not even BBMP's function. It is taken care of by BWSSB. So, and about 14% goes into solid waste management, and the remaining, I think something like 7 or 8% towards administrative expenses, and something around 6 to 7% on social infrastructure, which is health and education. So yes, we are very infrastructure heavy here. And I'm assuming most of our audience has not very closely ever looked at a budget document. I would just briefly tell them that, like, if you had to open the BBMP budget, the budget is broadly divided into 12 function codes of the BBMP, and against each of these 12 functions, I mean, the summary page, you would see 3 columns. The first column is called actual expenditure, which would be of, say, if I had to take 2021-22 budget, I will be seeing 2019-20's actual expenditure. Then I'll see another column called revised expenditure, which would be that of last year, 2021. And this year's, all I will see is a budget expenditure. Okay, which is as an budgeted expenditure. These are basically a projection of what BBMP might be spending and for that particular, under that function code that in that year. And each of these function code is then become the detailed budget, and there are more than 2,000 line items in, if I had to take each of these function codes. So yeah, so how do we do this? So it is there is really not too much science that goes behind it. It is some form of a basic unit cost estimate that has been made, and year on year, what they use is an incremental approach, especially for revenue expenditure, where an average growth rate is considered, and it is not so much. Neither is it based on any normative approach, which it should be, and neither is it very contextual. Like, for example, a city like again, I'm giving the example of water supply, which may not be very correct for Bangalore, but but if Bangalore had to supply water, the cost of supplying water would be much higher for Bangalore as compared to Mumbai, because it's 980 meters above sea level, and there are other factors as well, and that there isn't a source close by. But any of these unit costs that are considered in under any budget head, they don't take into really context of these things. Yeah. So, and with this, that is for revenue expenditure. But with capex expenditure estimates, what they do is usually they consider for an infrastructure project the detailed project report, and then based on that, they make estimates for what they put in the current year. So obviously, what we find is there is a huge difference between the budgeted expenditure, the revised estimates, and the actual estimates. So, for example, say an X amount was budgeted for 2021-22. When we see it about 2 years later, we will see we've only spent something like 60% under that particular budget head. So in some ways, we can see there is very, very little connection between 1 year's budget and then the next year's projection. And so it's very difficult to get a clear picture based on that. So in some ways, I would say it is not. It should be, but it's not based on a normative approach. There are many standards available to BBMP and other Indian cities, but it's not really followed to the T. One place where this incremental approach really works well is for administrative expenses, because it is very easy to predict. Like, you would have your salaries growing at this rate and all that. So that incremental approach works well over there. But other than that, there is no it is not based on a normative approach, and neither is it very, very contextual. It is based on a unit cost approach, and then they kind of build on it year on year. So what I will do in the next 3-4 minutes, I'll briefly talk about where I feel where BBMP's budget is really lacking, and what we can do to sort of, I won't talk about what we can do, but I would highlight the main issues just with regard to BBMP's budgeting. Yeah, so I think,
just to sorry to interrupt, but just to sort of again contextualize what you're saying, because that's a lot of information even in that very brief period. But is it fair to summarize what you're saying as, one, there is no clear single approach BBMP is taking, but largely their budget is following an incremental approach, which doesn't make sense for a lot of, say, infrastructure planning or certain planning, because that cost might change year to year?
No, I'm so sorry to cut you in the middle. I won't say it doesn't make sense. For example, capital expenditure is based on a DPR, right? It is based, but whether that amount that was projected to be spent on a capital infrastructure project, whether or not that was spent, that is a different thing. And then again, based on that, again, you're making an incremental estimate that much more will be spent. And now coming to revenue expenditure, yes, it is, they are just, for example, with respect to street lights. Okay, now it is very, you can really calculate it down to the T. There may be little 5-10% variation, how much it would take to estimate, to maintain the O&M of street lights. Because the cost of each say LED light or whatever it is that they're using and all that. There are unit cost approaches available, but it is not. There is a normative unit cost approach available, but unfortunately, no city in India really does it to that T. And somehow, what happens under each budget head, historically a particular budgeting format has been followed, and they kind of just build on it year on year.
Okay, and is it also fair to summarize what you said earlier as often what they estimate they will spend, what they project they will spend, and if there's a discrepancy, it's not explained in the next year, and it's not clearly. So if they say that they're going to spend, say 1 crore, but they only spend 40 lakhs, it's not there's no real explanation often from
No, there is no real explanation. And basically, what happens is, for example, this year's budget document is just is like more like wishful thinking that this year I will complete this much and I will spend. But even they know that, and I will come to the reasons why they do that wishful thinking as well. And they know most very often they know that they won't be able to spend that 1 crore, but because of the way the budgeting structure is, they would still put that down. So yeah.
Okay, so I will I'll come back to you about why this is happening. But I'd like to now move on to Santosh and ask you for your reactions on the current the state government's grants to Bengaluru and the amounts that they have set aside for different projects. And generally, because you led the My City, My Budget campaign, Janagra has been integral to this campaign. So, and I've been looking at some of the older My City, My Budget campaign reports as well. And I was wondering if you could also give us your reaction to what is being, what has been allocated for Bengaluru right now, as well as how well this aligns with My City, My Budget campaign, which is one of those tools we have to assess what citizens really want.
Yeah. Thanks, Banu. So, see, basically the Bangalore, compared to most other metro cities or cities, the budgeting processes are as good or as bad as any other cities with which it is comparable. In fact, our opinion is that in many ways, Bangalore is comparatively better compared to cities of its categories. So in terms of a bit of transparency, or in following what Sukanya was talking about, estimates which are just estimates, and then you are not accountable about how much you spend eventually on that. So I think it is as good or as bad as any other city, but I think tinge better compared to other cities. Now, coming to the specific, the citizen inputs and how do in fact, this year we have conducted the My City, My Budget with a lot of citizen organizations. It's mainly a citizen-driven effort. So clearly, the results that we have published this year. I have the data here, which says 17% of the people want the footpaths to be fixed. And then road repair is the next one, which is 16%. Then the desilting of roadside drains is 13%. Then repairing existing street lights is 11%. And then, the remaining is about the rainwater harvesting. So obviously, this is on a certain set of categories that we had put out to the people. So the priorities are very clear. No doubt that the road infrastructure needs to be improved. But what is more helpful is a bottom-up approach, and I think BBMP has started taking steps in that direction. What we have seen in the past 2 years, I think in 21-22, there was some allocation which was about 60 lakhs per ward, where they started with allocation based on the citizen inputs. It's a small amount compared to the overall budget, but in principle, acceptance of citizen inputs or bottom up budgeting. We don't have any evidence of any city doing that bottom up approach anywhere in the country. So I think we should acknowledge. What is good is that even last year, although it was not announced in the budget, they did allocate about 1 crore for every ward, which was about 200 crores based on the previous number of wards. This year, based on the My City, My Budget inputs that we have submitted, we have been assured by the leadership that the budget, the allocation will be enhanced based compared to the 200 crore that was given last year. What would be the amount? We are very hopeful. So let's wait and see till next week what the budget says. But what is heartening is that the acknowledgement of citizens' inputs. I think this is a settled matter that for 3 years back to back, if there is allocation based on citizen inputs, that means the city government cares for the citizens' inputs. Now, what needs to be done probably in terms scaling this up is how do we do the ward development schemes which are envisaged in the in the BBMP Act. So you do a ward development plan or a scheme, not just for 1 year, even for the city. I think the FRBM rules and all want us to think like 5 years down the line. There has to be a vision for the city development. And then you say that the first year I will spend this much, the second year I want to spend this much in this category and all that. And you maintain it.
Santosh, can you explain what FRBM is for our audience?
So it basically is a set of legal provisions, laws, which necessitates the BBMP to bring in certain discipline in making of the budget, in spending and planning and things like that. So it's a very simple set of rules, which I think the civil society, the citizens can actually, we can have, Janagara can facilitate another session for, through your platform on the FRBM rules itself. We'll have experts and we can discuss on that. I think when we're talking about transparency and bringing accountability and, focused spending and citizen participation, the FRBM rules are very, very important. BBMP has adopted it recently, but complete adoption of this will lead to a lot of streamlining of our finances and the better development of the society. Of the city, basically. So I think the civil society can look more into, we are empowered with the FRBM rules, so we can get to know more about it and then work with BBMP to implement them, I think.
Right. So it's interesting because I think you've taken a more optimistic and let's say balanced approach to this issue, and you are pointing out that there are ways in which BBMP has been more participatory. However, now I'd like to move on to Katyayani and ask her for her reactions on the budget, especially in the context not just of the state government's allocations and where they are focusing their spending, but also the context Sukanya provided, where she pointed out that so far her reading of BBMP budget allocations, 6 to 7% is all they spend on social infrastructure. So, and if you look at the state government's budget also, there is a lot of focus on physical infrastructure, even for schools, hospitals. It's a lot of the focus is on buildings, on construction and, providing certain materials and things. But I wanted to know what you think of this, and what do you think there are problems with where it's allocated? You're on mute.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thanks to Citizen Matters for giving me this opportunity. And this is a very important subject right now in the wake of the Karnataka's budget. And I would like to say that this whole process of budgeting that is happening for Bangalore is totally wrong, because the state government is controlling the entire development of Bengaluru in total violation of the 74th Constitutional Amendment, which says that there has to be a Metropolitan Planning Committee which does the planning for Bangalore, and the Metropolitan Planning Committee should create a vision plan for Bangalore, and the budgeting has to happen as per that vision plan. So the total violation is that the state government is still holding the reins for entire budgeting also for Bengaluru, especially with regard to all this physical infrastructure we are talking about, with 70% for roads and so on. Whereas the entire 74th Amendment, the vision is that the third tier of government, which is the BBMP Council, should hold the reins. And for the bigger metropolitan area, it should be the Metropolitan Planning Committee that develops the plans. And the 74th Amendment very clearly says that the planning should be for economic development and for social justice. So if you're only talking about roads and solid waste management, where is the inclusivity coming? So what about the slums? What about the water and supply, or water supply and sanitation? What about the health and social infrastructure, health, education, and childcare, and even for the migrants? Where is the social infrastructure for all that? So the whole problem is that the state government has not devolved all these functions to the BBMP Council or to the MPC at a larger level, the Metropolitan Planning Committee. And so the budget for Bengaluru looks like it's only for roads and there's nothing else, you know. So is that the only problem we have, or is that the only thing we need to plan for? So, and that too, that the all the projects that have been financed is mostly for widening road or for building flyover, for building elevated corridor or some such thing, which is catering to about 20 lakh private car owners. Now we have a population of 1.3 crore population in Bengaluru. So why are we concentrating only on this 20 lakh car owners, for whom all this infrastructure is being developed? And in terms of physical infrastructure, that we're talking only about roads. So where is the budget for the social infrastructure? Now you mentioned that 7 or 8% or 6% is being given for health and education under the BBMP budget, but there is a lot of schools, Anganwadis, and primary healthcare centers which don't come under BBMP. They are all still under the line departments, which are accountable to the state government. So by not activating the Metropolitan Planning Committee and making the Metropolitan Planning Committee come up with a totally inclusive budget for the entire Bangalore, you are giving such a skewed appearance to this budget, you know. And even when you look at the water supply and thing is in the hands of the Water Supply Board, Bangalore Water Supply Board. BESCOM is there under the electricity supplies under BESCOM. The traffic and transportation is under BMPC, which are all parastatals not coming under either the MPC or the BBMP Council. So how do you bring an inclusive and sustainable plan for Bengaluru and budgeting based on that if there is no integrated planning mechanism at all? And so first of all, they should have activated the Metropolitan Planning Committee, which has been totally sidelined or made dysfunctional. And I mean, and also if I want to say about the Karnataka Local Fund Authorities Fiscal Responsibility Act, under which the rules have been framed now. Yes. This Fiscal Responsibility Act also very clearly says where the priorities should be. And definitely now we need to plan and have a vision document. Santosh also mentioned that it has to be a 5-year vision document. And we have to localize the sustainable development goals. So if you're only talking about roads, how are you going to bring total integrated sustainable plan that looks at localizing sustainable development goals? And if you want to do that, then you have to very well bring all the line departments which are now looking at the Anganwadis, the schools and the primary healthcare centers to come under the MPC and also under the BBMP. So this is the total dysfunctionality that is happening. And the other point is about citizen participation, which Santosh also mentioned. So the Fiscal Responsibility Act also very clearly says that there has to be 2 public consultations at the city level. And there the proposed budget, they have to lay down before the citizens from where are they going to budget for all these the actual aims of inclusive and sustainable development, and also say how much of it is going to come from revenue expenditure, how much of it is going to come from loans, how much from the state government grants, how much from the finance commission grants. So, and place it before the citizens for approval and take their consent, and also prepare a medium-term fiscal plan for for a longer period, like for 5 years. It will set down the standards for your use. How much should your how much should your loan be? It should be within certain limits of fiscal responsibility. And how big should your loan be? And how do you plan to repay it? And the other point is, not only at the city level do you have to make this document public, there has to be a bottom-up process of collecting area-wise demands from the citizens through the area sabhas, which are also part of the AMC Act now, and now part of the BBMP Act also, where every voter has to assemble in an area sabha for the polling booth areas that are marked as the area, and come up with plans for their area. And it should include not just roads and drains and things like that. It should be based on the sustainable development goal for that area. And the bottom-up plan from every area has to be collated at the ward level. The ward committee has to, collate the plan and make a ward plan. That has to be collated at the MPC level, at the city level, and then at the MPC level to come up with the total budget and plan for Bangalore. I'll stop here.
Okay, so
Bhanu, you're on mute.
Really good roadmap as to how bottom-up budgeting, what it can look like, especially with an MPC actually in place. So I'd like to bring Santosh back in here quickly to react to this. I'm sure that there's a lot to agree with Katyayani, but considering you talked about how much more progressive BBMP is compared to some of the other parastatal agencies providing services in our city, what is your reaction, or what do you think of the fact that we still don't have a functional metropolitan planning committee, which is supposed to have elected representatives, right? Which is supposed to be the way we can keep our political leaders or authorities in some kind of check. We can hold them accountable. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, see, most of the points that Katyayani was mentioning. So yes, there is a provision for MPC, and I mean, no doubt that has to come alive, right? So it has to be implemented. But apart from that, see, going back to the fundamental question of why such a big percentage on roads. See, it could be roads or it could be anything. The moment you take money from somebody else, meaning here in this case the state government, it will come with strings attached, right? So I give you, see, your own budget is 2,000 crores, or your own revenue is 2,000 or 3,000 crores, and I give you another 6,000, 7,000 crores. So I will definitely end up dictating where that money has to be spent. Now I may say roads, I may say drains, or I may say whatever. So as long as BBMP as many other municipal bodies, are dependent on the state government in terms of grant, not in terms of devolution. That's a different thing. So maybe we would love to have, more financial things devolved. For example, why is the professional tax not devolved back to, BBMP, right? We are a world city now. So why we can raise crores of rupees in terms of professional tax if it is devolved to BBMP? So the fundamental question we should be asking is, why is not BBMP empowered with its, or why is BBMP not having enough sources of funds by itself in terms of empowerment or devolution? B, what are the innovative ways in which BBMP can raise its own revenues? Then you don't have to depend on any state government or anything who will dictate how you have to spend it. So I think we need to address those fundamental things when we're talking about this one. Otherwise, it's oversimplification that we are spending on roads or we are spending on this. When money comes from somebody, it will come with strings attached. So I think there could be innovative ways. How do we monetize the brand Bengaluru for its own for its own usage? There could be a lot of innovative ways in which we can raise in-house funding, but BBMP.
I think Santosh has frozen for a little bit, so we'll wait for him to join back. But before that, we have a few questions in the comment box as well as on our social media channels, which also we can take up now, I think. One of the things is, Katyani, I think you could take this. One of the questions we've been asked is, what should an alternative budget look like? What specific areas of social infrastructure that need funds and how much? So something if you could address very quickly.
Yeah, like I already mentioned, when we compare what is happening in the urban areas like Bengaluru to what is happening in the rural areas, in the rural area, the devolution and the decentralization to the third tier of government is happening in a much better way. Though it may not be perfect, but at least there's an attempt to empower the Gram Panchayats to do, a vision, a perspective plan for 5 years and to have bottom-up planning. And so, in fact, actually, under the Rural Development Ministry, for the rural areas, they have what is called a Mission Antyodaya, which means reaching the last man in the last village, and enabling his development. So they have this Mission Antyodaya toolkit for actually doing the planning and how it is to be done. And it actually says there has to be a total survey of the Gram Panchayat area to create a database of what is existing there. And then you have to map the deficits. You first find out how many Anganwadis should be there as per the standards. How many schools should be there with what infrastructure? What kind of primary healthcare system should be there, and how many doctors and how much equipment and all that should be there. So you have to first do a survey, not only of the social infrastructure and physical infrastructure. You have to also do household survey to find out what are the actual needs of the citizens, how many are below poverty line, how many are living in a cramped, house, and what are the standards one should maintain for all that, and present the database of what is existing in terms of social and physical infrastructure and the individual needs of the families before the Gram Sabha. And the Gram Sabha will prioritize and say, yes, this is the 5-year plan we want. And this year, if we are being given this many crores or this many lakhs, these are the priority things that we want to do. And the prioritization is done by the Gram Sabha, the citizens. And nobody else can change it. The higher levels cannot change it. So that roadmap has been laid for the rural area, that this is how the planning should happen, so that all the needs are taken care of, and both the social and physical infrastructure is taken care of, and and that the social, the sustainable development goals are met, met through this 5-year vision plan. So why is this not translated to our urban areas also, is what I'm questioning. So there has to be a similar toolkit for the urban areas to go about doing the plan. In fact, for the Metropolitan Planning Committee, the rule says that they have to devise the guidelines for the BBMP to how to plan, for the areas of BBMP. The guidelines have to be provided by them. But so far, they have not met, the MPC has not met, and they have not prepared the guidelines. So we are at a very great disadvantage when compared to the rural areas, because we don't have the guidelines, we don't have the toolkit on how to go about planning. Now, Mr. Santosh mentioned about My City, My Budget plan, where some citizens are giving some random inputs for a ward plan. But is that how the plan should be developed? To meet the total needs of the ward from every area. Every area has to be represented. All the needs of the areas have to be taken into account, and then a comprehensive plan that is going to be prioritized has to be put before the ward sabha, or the ward committee to develop the priorities. So that whole process of simply collecting random inputs from citizens is not at all advisable, because it depends who is participating there. Is it only the affluent sections of the area that are coming up with their inputs, random inputs? What about the inputs from the slum areas or from the urban poor? Are we even looking at that? And are we only talking about physical infrastructure of roads? The ward plan has to be a total plan meeting social justice, and economic development. So are we also looking at having an employment plan? And, because that is also part of the goals of the 74th Amendment. So I would say that there is a great need for a toolkit for urban ward planning, and also at the city level ward planning. And right now it is totally missing. What Janagraha is doing may be a first step, to activate citizens to come up with some, ideas. But it has to be in a more planned way, which will be inclusive and sustainable. That's
Right.
what I would like to say.
I will ask Santosh to react to this, since you are, since this is the direct criticism of the plan, or at least a direct commentary on My City, My Budget. But before I hand it over to you, I just want to also share a few thoughts that our viewers are sharing on YouTube, on the comment section, as well as social media. Sneha Priya from Instagram, for instance, I'm reading out from my phone. She points out that the current budget makes no mention of how funds can be used for development of parks or open spaces, which is sort of an indication of, a very different vision for the city, one where, you have more access to nature. She says that this is the only way cities can be made climate resilient, and this is one aspect. Planning for open spaces and parks and access to nature is one aspect that helps making a city climate resilient. Since you mentioned environmental plans, there are citizens clearly with different visions of what a city should be like. So before I get to some of the others, Santosh, if you can talk a little bit about what you see My City, My Budget as contributing, and how you respond to what she's saying.
Yeah, see, there is nothing, see, certainly what we are trying to do is bring a practice of citizen consultation and give a structure to it. I mean, there is no claim that this is everything and this is all, actually. So So I would not go too much into that one. As far as the technical aspects of the My City, My Budget are concerned, it is not limited to just affluent people or anything. The urban poor, the disadvantaged, various sections of the society, youths, and gender, everything is covered. Of course, you have a population with more than 1 crore. We are not able to cover the entire population, and nor does a citizen-led effort can make that happen. It has to come systemically from the government or the city government. So we acknowledge all that, but it's a humble, modest effort to bring citizen voice heard in a structured manner. Otherwise, what used to happen, the BBMP calls a meeting and just 20-30 people end up in that meeting and you give some random suggestions. So what we have done is bring structure in that whole consultation process. So where specific inputs can be given on, like, this footpath of 500 meters on the 3rd cross near in my locality in ward number so and so needs fixation, right? So that's the specific input you are giving through My City, My Budget. There is more likelihood that it will be addressed because there is evidence that this 500 length of meters length of footpath needs fixing, or something related to garbage, or some stormwater drain broken, or whatever it is. So there is, we are actually collecting evidence and submitting. Whether it is comprehensive, obviously not. We need to make it comprehensive. I already spoke about how to make it comprehensive, like the ward development scheme, and I will not shy away. We have tools where we have the ward quality score, the ward infra index, all those things where we can actually benchmark the existing infrastructure and services at this point. For example, let's say we talk about street lights. Where does the ward stand in terms of street lights? What is the gaps? So we do the gap assessment, and then we can plan for the next 4 years, 5 years, do budget allocations, and then come out with improvements in that score. So whether this is the only scale, perhaps not. We are happy to share what we have, but it can be bettered as well. So the point is not whether my tool is better or your tool is better. The point is that do we have a tool at all, first of all? So I think if the government, if we work with the government, all that we are trying to do is draw home the point that we need tools, we need such templates, we need such processes, standard processes through which we take budgeting very seriously, make it needs based, make it citizen centric. I think with that philosophy, if we proceed, the processes can be better. There is no doubt about it. So I would just pause with those things, those thoughts.
Okay. I think and you made this point previously as well, that one of the ways is empowering.
One thing, Banu. So regarding the sustainability also, I think this year we specifically chose those topics or categories which have an impact on the climate. So it leads to some climate action. Either it improves, it leads to some improvement in walkability, non-motorized transport, or garbage management, or the water harvesting, or climate resilience in terms of stormwater drains. So most of the My City, My Budget inputs that the categories were based on the climate resilience or climate action part. So it was consciously done because we are facing these issues and the recent floods and all that. So in that context, we are trying to make ourselves as a city ready for that through budgeting process. So the thought might have got just started getting implemented in a small way. It needs to be scaled up for the entire budget process. So yeah, that.
Right. So one thing I would ask, one thing I'm wondering here, and I think we all need to address is, okay, we can start this process of thinking and envisioning what the city needs at ward levels. But then there is also the issue of implementation, right? How do we hold civic agencies, governments accountable to do the things that say, let's say that everybody in a ward inclusively people from different communities, different income brackets actually come together and create a vision, create a set of needs that they have at the ward level. How do we then get these officials, these civic agencies to implement it? That's the other challenge, right? And here, before I would like to ask both of you to step in and give me your thoughts very quickly, because we are getting close to the end. But before we do that, I do want to, we've got quite a few comments and questions again, and I want to mention Pawan Hegde has, I think he has sort of mirroring, reflecting what you were saying, Katyayani, about Gram Sabhas. And he's pointing out that his suggestion is that cities should be divided into Gram Sabhas, which, some sort of a Gram Sabha model where there can be increased voter participation. He feels this is a good way to also ward out corruption. And he's saying that, the cities, urban cities should be seen as an amalgamation of many villages and not as one single unit. I would like you guys to react to that, and also to my question of how do we then, if let's say everything is planned well at the ward level, how do we get it actually implemented? How do we hold them accountable to do that? Maybe Katyayani, would you like to go first? But we'll be really brief now.
Yeah. So the how to make them accountable, that is being laid down in the Act or in the 74th Amendment, that the citizens have to be, allowed to participate in the ward committees and in the area sabhas, where they have every right to question the councillor on what he has been doing. The very first function under the KMC Act and even in the BBMP Act now is that the citizens have to plan through the ward committee. And also they have to ensure the proper usage of the funds, which means that the councillor should not be sitting only with the engineer of the ward and planning, and behind closed doors and spending money without making it public. So he has to, the ward committee has every right to ask him to disclose what are the projects that are being taken up in the ward and how much money has come and how is he planning to spend the money? Is it as per the plan devised by the citizens? He has to be open about it at the ward level. Of course, now there has been some effort to put all these documents about budgets and spending, whatever BBMP has done, on the website at the city level. But often that is only about the ward level allocation, which does not cover the allocation that has come to the Anganwadi or the school or the hospital. There is no total transparency about how much money is actually coming to the ward, through all these line departments. How much is coming from BWSSP or from some other source. So we have been demanding that at the ward level, we should have an idea of from where all the funds are coming for every budget that is sanctioned, even through the line departments. It should disclose in which ward that money is being spent, so that at the ward level, people will get a total idea of how much money is coming from various streams. And once we know from where the money is coming and how it is being spent, now transparency has to happen even about all those other line department functions. And then the citizens have to be empowered to do social audit. That is the only way you can curb corruption. Right now, you're saying there'll be some technical vigilance committee sitting at the city level, or commissioner is going to come and inspect the ward and see whether money is being spent properly. So if there are going to be 243 wards, how many wards can the chief commissioner come and inspect, or even the zonal commissioner, how much can he come and inspect? Because it's only the citizens each citizen has 2 eyes. And if 100 citizens are active in a ward and they are monitoring how the money is being spent, you have 200 pairs of eyes looking at how the money is being spent. So that is the way to come up with, that is the way to curb corruption. having total transparency and making them accountable at the ward committee level by disclosing everything. And it should be done in a transparent, real-time basis. We are saying every ward should have its own website. And all these expenditures from the Anganwadi, the school, the hospital, whatever, should be disclosed.
Okay. So, Katyayani, I'm going to interrupt you here and bring Santosh
about
in.
the Gram Seva, center.
Right.
Yes.
So,
So
Santosh,
there
if
should
you
be,
could
we are
quickly-
actually demanding under Mahiti Kanaja. Yes.
Yeah, sorry. So
I'm sorry, I lost you.
No, yeah, I think your network is a little.
Somebody was saying something. I lost you.
I'm going to bring Santosh in over here now and ask him to
Okay,
respond to the same thing.
Yeah, I'll stop here.
Especially
Yeah,
some-
thank you.
Sorry, Banu, I'm
who
unable.
has been involved in so. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now better. Please, please.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask you to also react to the same question. How do we then make how do we keep our officials accountable? And as somebody, she mentioned, Katyayani mentioned social audits. Maybe you could also talk a little bit about that, considering you've got a lot of experience. Again, like, I'll request all of you to be very brief now because we have a lot of comments and questions as well for all of you.
Yeah, certainly. So I'll just take a minute, I think. So see, the word is active citizenship. I think we can ask, n number of things from the BBMP, from BWSSB, from state government and all that. But while we are, there is something which is coming from the government, but in a democracy, for whatever reason, let's say things are not happening. The only way that we can make it happen is by creating enough pull pressure, right? So there should be enough demand for that. Now, my data says that in the last, September to December, 1,864 ward committee meetings were supposed to happen. Now let's remember that BBMP has no obligation to conduct ward committees right now because there is no council, right? So no law is mandating them. Now let's acknowledge that BBMP is conducting. Now how good, how effective, how not effective, I mean, that's a matter we can keep discussing. But let's also credit BBMP that they're continuing the ward committees despite the council not being in place. So now 1,864 ward committee meetings were supposed to happen from September to December, and 1,553 meetings did happen in these 4 months or so. So what it means is ward committee meetings are happening. The effectiveness we can always argue, debate and all that. But how many citizens have participated in this one? It's not like one, a few Katyayani madams and a few Santosh Narguns or, few other people participate. I think the point we need to also realize is that while we expect, 100 things from the government or the BBMP, the citizens also need to come in hundreds of numbers to participate in these things to make, let's not say we'll do 100 things. Let's do 2 things, but very effectively at least, right? So are we able to track, even how many people are seeing the budgets properly? So I think what is necessary today is a big necessity for the citizens to come out and participate, and demanding accountability and transparency is our right, no doubt. And let's figure out if things are not right, how do we do it? And let's remember, we are not working against a colonial government here. So it is like not versus we versus they. It is we and we only. It is our government. We have to ultimately, it is our government. We have to work with that and make it happen. If things are not there, let's see how to make it happen. Things may not always be great, but let's figure out how to do it. What is the other way around? We can keep complaining. So there is no end to that, right? I will pause at that.
Okay. So among the many comments we've had, clearly a big part of the concern is corruption, which we have tried to talk about a little bit. It is linked to accountability. So a lot of comments asking how do we deal with corruption. Krishnaswamy has suggested having an index, a corruption index for every development project. I'm not sure how that would work, but it's an interesting idea. Some of the other questions are also about specific services. For example, Vali Srinivasan is asking, where do the funds for BWSSB come from? Because she says the sewage system is so pathetic. Vali, so just quickly, the Karnataka budget is, the Karnataka state government has allocated around 200 to 300 crores to BWSSB this year, which already news reports are pointing out is inadequate for a lot of the repair work and drain work that they need to do. So again, it's symptomatic, I think, of the fact that we have an accountability problem. So, Santosh, you want to say something there?
No, besides the state government, I mean, let's not forget they collect the user charges. That is the main revenue source for them, right? So they are collecting the water charges from us. So yeah, but rightly said, BWSSB is much less accountable to citizens because there is no council, no ward committee, nothing for that. So I mean, we should think on more fundamental things of those things than keep bashing BBMP. I'm not batting for BBMP, but bashing BBMP either won't help. I mean, we need to see how to fix it if things are not.
So you're saying that we need a systemic change in how all services are provided within the city and how it's accounted for, right? So Sukanya, I want to bring you back in here for a little more. We have a few more questions about the process of financing, and very quickly, our consulting editor T.R. Gopal Krishnan has this question about whether zero-based budgeting systems are practical for city budgets. He asks if they can be divided into short-term, medium-term, long-term sections, especially considering how long infrastructure work takes. So, Kanya, do you have anything to say? Do you have any insights on this about zero-based budgeting systems?
So, okay, so I'll just have to say two things that. Firstly, am I audible because I'd gone offline for a bit? Am I audible, right? Yeah. So so I think that both Santosh and Katyani ma'am mentioned this thing about medium-term budgeting and also long-term vision. I think what we need in terms of for city like Bangalore is that we need to have a 5-year vision as a long-term 5-year budget as well, other than the yearly budget that goes. And I think, and that I missed a part of it, I think that was discussed a bit in today's session as well. And so actually during for my PhD work, I've been talking to several very senior municipal finance experts in the country. And I mean, I think one idea that's been sort of making the rounds is that a long-term perspective budget for especially the metropolitan cities, where a lot of infrastructure projects are that need to be undertaken, is a very, very good idea. Because what happens is then there is a vision, then there is finances that sort of that is kind of supporting that, and then you have your yearly budgets. And so I think that would really help having a like, for example, I think during the JNNURM we had these CDPs, the city development plans. Those were vision documents, but they weren't very heavy on the finance bit of it. And I think so I think having a long-term at least a 5-year financial long-term perspective budget would really help BBMP sort of organize itself. And so I think the capex numbers will not be so inflated in that way. So I think that would help. And I would really like to again drive home 2 points that I've been making, and maybe because I'm a PhD researcher, this really bothers me, is that there are no normative standards that are at all followed in making, when you are making expenditure estimates, and when there are so many and several available for the last 40 years in the country. So that is one thing. And even with respect to revenue capacities, there's a lot that BBMP can do, even by doing the basic things right. There is, for example, just include exempted properties, enhance collection efficiency. There's a lot that BBMP can do even in that aspect. So, I mean, don't have to do something very drastic, and but even if it just does these kind of several small changes, also BBMP's revenue capacities can be enhanced to a very large extent. So these are the two things I would want to say in the end.
Okay. So I will again go back to a few of the comments. Again, a lot of the comments we are seeing are very focused on corruption. So there is, at least among the viewers who are tuned in right now, there is a lot of concern for corruption. Geeta Vishwanathan says that despite so much money being spent, the roads are in a pathetic state. Pushpa says that ward committees do not function as per rules. After the first few meetings, either the frequency is not ensured or contractors or relatives of councillors are included, which she says should not be allowed. Veto power should not be given to anyone related to councillors or contractors in ward committee meetings, which is, I think, a very important process issue, certainly, because if there is a conflict of interest, it should be acknowledged. But clearly, a lot of this is again pointing to systemic, to lack of a functional system where everything, where services can be accounted for and citizens can find a way to, keep track of what is happening with their city. I will. We are past our 1 hour time limit, so I'm going to sort of start winding up now. But I would like to ask. We've already talked a lot about alternative ways of budgeting. All three of you have had thoughts about this. One of the things I'd like to ask is how do we, because Santosh, you pointed out citizens need to be more actively involved. How do you think this can happen? And how do you think the media, how do you think people like us, Citizen Matters, or other daily newspapers, how are we as journalists, reporters covering issues of municipal finance expenditure, reporting on, say, state budget allocations? How should that improve? I'm sure that that we all need to improve. So how should we do better? And I would like to hear a little bit about that from all three of you. What are things that you think we should cover, which will help citizens understand more and participate more? And I want everyone to try and keep it to 2 or 3 sentences in the interest of time. Katyani, do you want to go first?
Yeah, what I would like to add is that, the state government should stop giving us grants. They should give that money as per the 12th schedule. The municipality is supposed to do 18 functions. So they have to do activity mapping actually and say which are the functions that BBMP can do and which are the functions that are needed to be done at the state level, like fire services. I don't think that can be done totally at the ward level or at the city level. Maybe state government does need to have a role there. Maybe very big infrastructure projects, the state government will have to have a role in that. So the problem is that in the rural area, there is activity mapping between what the Gram Panchayat does, what Taluk Panchayat does, and what Jilla Panchayat does. That kind of activity mapping has not happened here at all between state government, between Metropolitan Planning Committee, with BBMP, and down to the ward level. So they need to do proper activity mapping and say which are the functions out of the 18, that, and whatever money is being given now is being given tied to certain schemes. Yeah, Nagarotana scheme, you must do this road and this road or something like that, and the state government is deciding all that. They should stop doing that. Give whatever is required as a devolution, to the Metropolitan Planning Committee to plan for whatever they want to plan, and not give tied funds. They have to give the entire budget to MPC to as untied fund to make to budget for their own vision plan and for their plan. So I don't know if I've answered what you were asking. So
you're suggesting that these the activities of different agencies need to be clarified for citizens, because which is of course true. Every one of us.
And all the money that is now with the parastatals has to be also given to the MPC. The MPC has to have a comprehensive fund to meet all the different services that BBMP has to provide. based on the 18 functions in the 12th schedule, and the money has to be planned at that level and not by the state government. They should let go. I think, I don't know if I answered what you were asking. Is there something that you have to
add? Certainly. So Kanya, do you want to come in next? What do you think, especially the media or anybody should do to disseminate some of this very complex information that you have tried to provide us today as well?
I think like Katyani ma'am mentioned that the mapping the funds, the functions, the functionaries, this is something the media and especially a platform like Citizen Matters can really simplify it and really present it in forms of articles or holding talks like this and all that to it doesn't have to be very, very complicated. You can take one aspect of say the functions that the local body is supposed to, and then just do one deep dive onto that. Then maybe over a couple of days, you can couple of articles or whatever, look at only the revenue side. So there is, so I think breaking down functionaries and explaining each of them and how they are related and can be and need to be mapped for effective and good governance is something the media can really simplify and put it out there for citizens.
Santosh, would you like to come?
Yeah, I would not like to repeat what already has been told. So the devolution and all are very, very important. Besides this, I think what the media and we all as citizens and civil society should, I think there is need for better education to citizens regarding the structure of how the systems work and how we can better them. That is one thing we can do, and more participation is required based on informed participation is required. So that is another thing that I think the media can work. The media has done a great work, bringing so many facts, figures, and things to the people. But I think we should also focus on the solutions part also, because most of the times the media tends to be carried away by highlighting the problems only. For example, right now we are saying, oh, why 8,000 crores or 10,000 crores? Maybe the argument is maybe Bangalore needs much more money than what is being spent right now. But not just the more money, but how do we generate it locally without we don't get it without any strings attached. And so because if Bangalore has to maintain the leadership position of its, as a technology leader or as a preferred destination for industry and all that, Bangalore needs much more investment. And also, the outer wards which are contributing to the, more and more economic contribution to the city are being neglected right now. So how do we prevent that skewness also between the outer wards and the inner wards? So all these things we need to take it in a very holistic manner. And BBMP has to also, we need to nudge BBMP to explore own source funding through some innovative ways or through public fund, citizen-centric projects through or sustainable projects through private partnership and all those things. So I think these are all the things we need to take rather than, just be, limited to criticizing. We need to choose whether we want to be part of the problem or part of the solution. I think that's it.
I certainly have to agree with you that as a journalist, I find it a lot easier to find problems and all issues in the city. But yeah, we understand what you're saying. There are solutions that we have to also report on. I think we'll have to close because this is all we have time for. But thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for this conversation. This is obviously just the beginning of many conversations we need to have. There are, even in the comment section, our questions, we have quite a few. But I think I'd really like to thank all our panelists for giving us a real roadmap of what issues we need to explore and report and disseminate in the coming days. I'd like to also tell everybody who's tuned in that with the elections coming, with BBMP's own budget coming out soon, we will be doing more reporting on where money is being spent, what is being planned, how much what our politicians are saying and how many of those promises they're actually able to keep. So please tune in, keep reading our work, and keep joining in for these events as well. Thank you so much to all three of you, Katyayani, Santosh, and Sukanya. You can also find more about their work in the YouTube description box. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate Citizen Matters doing a great work. So please, let's continue. I mean, continue
Thank
and
you so
work
much.
with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katyayani. Thank you. Bye.